Time now for a look at the day's business news, and for that I'm joined here on set by Stephen Carroll, our business editor. And Stephen, we're starting in Argentina, which has asked the IMF to speed up payments as it faces a fresh economic crisis.
That's right. The International Monetary Fund says that it's willing to look at changing the timetable for paying instalments of Argentina's bailout loans. In a statement, IMF chief Christine Lagarde said that officials would meet with the Argentinian government and be open to their request due to the more adverse international market conditions. The president of Argentina, Mauricio Macri, made the request to ensure the IMF, to ensure the country can pay its bills through next year. Clément Bonnereau has the story.
A new phase of the crisis. As worries mount over an economy that doesn't seem to be improving, President Mauricio Macri struck an optimistic tone, saying he'd asked the International Monetary Fund to speed up the release of its bailout package.
I know that these painful situations generate angst and fear in many of you. I know and I understand it. But know that I am taking all the necessary decisions to take care of you. We are doing everything in our power to move forward.
The IMF agreed to lend $50 billion to Argentina in June, a move aimed at restoring investor confidence. Mauricio Macri was elected on the promise of reviving the economy, but his efforts have been hampered by turmoil facing emerging markets. The peso has lost more than 40% of its value against the dollar this year, and inflation is projected to reach 30% by the end of 2018.
The government lacks credibility on economic policy. And to that, the disastrous legacy of the previous government, and you get a situation where investors have lost all confidence in the economy. That is why they're pulling out.
Macri's decision to turn to the IMF for help has been criticized by many in Argentina. The organisation is widely blamed for the country's 2001 economic collapse after it pulled the plug and said no to a further bailout.
That was Clément Bonnereau reporting there. Now, Stephen, this bailout was only actually agreed in June. What's happened since then?
Well, as we were just hearing there, it's pretty controversial when Mauricio Macri decided to go to the IMF looking for help back in June. Now, even more controversial that he's asked the IMF to speed up those payments, and he doesn't do that lightly. Essentially, what's changed since the bailout agreed is that the value of the peso has slumped, as we were hearing there, and that's something that was really an international factor that just happened to affect Argentina. There was a sell-off across emerging market currencies, Argentina, Turkey, South Africa among the worst affected because of that, and that's as investors began moving money into the dollar, essentially back to the United States, because interest rates were rising there. So whereas they had been very low for a long period of time, investors had looked for other places to put their money to be able to make the best returns. They started to put it back in the dollar this year. That's been helped, of course, by some of the policies implemented by Donald Trump for investors as well. So Argentina became a victim of this. The peso has slumped in value. That's a problem because Argentina, like Turkey and other countries, holds a huge amount of debt in dollars. So as the peso gets weaker, that means that it costs more money to repay those debts. Next year, Argentina needs to repay $82 billion worth of debt, so it needs to be able to fund that. That's where this request to the IMF has come from. What President Macri is trying to avoid is another default, because, of course, the last time that happened with Argentina, it was a very big deal for the country. He's done a lot to try and restore investor confidence in Argentina. He's really trying to avoid undoing the good work that he had done before to try and restore Argentina's economy.
OK, let's move on now to trade talks in North America, where Canadian and American officials are continuing their negotiations.
Ministers from both sides are going to meet later this Thursday as they try to hammer out a new trade deal to replace NAFTA. Now, they'll discuss the progress that have been made by officials overnight. Dispute resolution thought to be one of the big issues still outstanding in those discussions, while Canadian media are reporting that Ottawa is ready to make concessions on its protected dairy market. Canada's Foreign Minister says the negotiations are at an intense moment.
Both parties are coming to this stage of the negotiation with a lot of goodwill. Certainly that is what Canada is bringing to the table. We understand each other's positions and what both sides need very, very well. What we've always said is, speaking for Canada, we're looking to stand up for our national interest, and we're looking to find compromises that are a win-win.
Well, meanwhile, President Donald Trump has signed a series of orders which lift the steel and aluminium import tariffs for certain countries. The measures allow quotas of tariff-free steel to be imported from South Korea, Brazil and Argentina, as well as aluminium from Argentina. This means that US companies can apply to import these metals from those countries without paying tariffs. That's only if they can't source supplies from inside the United States.
Now, Stephen, how are the markets taking all of that news this hour?
Well, we saw a bit of a turnaround in Asia. Earlier on, we had gains based on the progress on that NAFTA deal, but investors moving on later in the day to focus on the risks from the trade dispute between the US and China, which, of course, we haven't seen any signs of resolutions. There are tariffs on another $200 billion worth of Chinese goods expected to take effect in September. Shanghai and Hong Kong trading down there, just the Nikkei in Tokyo eking out some small gains before the closing.
Well, from the markets now, we can move on to Australia and to a major telecoms deal.
Yeah, that's right. TPG Telecom and Vodafone's Australian branch have agreed to merge in a deal worth 15 billion Australian dollars, or around 9 billion euros. The new combined company will be trying to compete with the two dominant players in the Australian telecoms market. Telstra and Optus hold around 80% of market share there.
Well, finally from you, Stephen, a Russian firm is now launching a new limousine in an effort to try and outwin or beat Rolls-Royce.
That's right. The Aurus brand unveiled two new models for the super rich in Russia, who the car maker says are tired of Rolls-Royces, Mercedes and others. The new designs are influenced by Soviet-era cars that were produced only for top officials at the time. Now, President Putin actually rode in one of Aurus's cars for his inauguration ceremony back in June. The Russian state invested around 150 million euros in this project. The company says that because their source materials come from Russia, they won't be as vulnerable to currency fluctuations as their rivals. The prices will still be around the same as other limousines, though, so there won't be any bargains to be had, Thomas.
Stephen Carroll with the Business News. Thank you very much.